morning everyone, I hope you all doing well. So for today's presentation, our group will present about Stylistics topic 4. In topic 4, we will talk about 3 main points. The first one, rhythm and matter, interpreting patterns of sound, and the last one, styles in a single poem. And for the presenters, there are me, Ochie, then Aston, Clarissa, and Vian.
Hello everyone, my name is Aston, and in this occasion I'm going to explain about rhythm and meter. But what actually rhythm and meter do in stylistic, you will going to find out more later in my explanation. Okay, so stylistics as the method of textual interpretation in which primacy of place is assigned to language helps us to explore creativity in language use. It enriches our ways of thinking and our understanding of language, specifically in literary texts. That is why it is mostly concerned with the study of style in literary works, and literature itself, by definition, written language. One of the written language works included in this study is poetry, which eventually leads to poems as well. Therefore, in poetry in particular, sound patterning plays a pivotal role, and in literary discourse in general. This unit deals more directly with the issue of sound patterning in literature, and it introduces core features like rhythm and meter, which have an important bearing on the structure and indeed the interpretation of poetry. Poetry itself has meter, hence this rather unusual communicative situation arises. When we hear someone reading a poem aloud, we tend to recognize very quickly that it is a poem that is being read and not another type of text. Even if the listener doesn't understand all the words of the text, they still know that they are listening to poetry. The spoken strong and weak syllables of words whenever a person reads this type of text would easily recognized by most people, even if many may don't really go into it. The distinctive, recognizable one of the characteristics which almost every poem has is what makes people tend to realize what kind of text is being read. Thus, meter plays a pivotal criterion in shaping a single complete poem. However, not formed in a random strong and weak syllables, but conversely, in an organized pattern of strong and weak syllables. Furthermore, poetry also has rhythm, which is created by the patterns of repeated sounds in such a way that the alternation between accented syllables and weak syllables is repeated. That repetition is what makes rhythm. Rhythm is therefore a pattern movement of pulses in time which is defined both by periodicity, which means it occurs at regular time intervals, and repetition, which means the same pulses occur again and again. Okay, so let us now try to walk through these definitions of meter and rhythm using some textual examples. In metrics, the foot is the basic unit of analysis, and it refers to the span of stressed and unstressed syllables that forms a rhythmical pattern. Different kinds of metrical feet can be determined according to the number of and ordering of their constituent stressed and unstressed syllables. Each line of poetry, therefore, has a certain number of poetic feet. One of the most common foots, the iambic foot, has 2 syllables. The first is less heavily stressed than the second, and we can use a D-dum pattern to look more formal typology. The trochaic foot, on the contrary, reverses the pattern with offering a dum-D style of meter. Okay, so here is a well-known example of the first type, a line from Thomas Gray's elegy written in a country churchyard. The ploughman homeward plods his weary way, and it should read, the ploughman homeward plods his weary way, or more or less like that. As there are 5 iambs in the line, this metrical scheme is iambic pentameter. You can see that the line has iambic pattern, because in those 10 syllables, an unstressed syllable indicated by D is followed by a stressed syllable indicated by dum. The stress syllables determine the name of the line. Therefore, the line is called iambic pentameter, because the poetic foot is iambic and the numbers of stress syllables are 5, which is called pentameter. Had there been 6 feet, it would have been iambic hexameter, or less than 5, iambic tetrameter then took its place. Okay, then here are some more examples of metrical patterning in verse. Below is the following fragment from Tennyson's Lady of Shalott. This is a good illustration of a trochaic pattern. By the margin willow veiled, slightly heavy barges trailed. Using our model of analysis, the first line of the couplet can be zeroed thus: by the margin willow veiled. So this is an example of trochaic tetrameter. The line has trochaic pattern in which in those 8 syllables, a stressed syllable indicated by dum is followed by an unstressed syllable indicated d. As explained earlier, the foot of the trochaic is the opposite of the iambic. If iambic emphasizes unstressed at the first, trochaic emphasizes unstressed at the second after stressed syllable has been read first. In addition, the numbers of stressed syllables are 4, which is called tetrameter. That's why the line is called trochaic tetrameter. Okay, so the next example, the following line from Winston Hugh Auden's poem, "Oh, what is that sound?" which also known as the crowing, represents another, slightly more complicated type of versification. Oh, what is that sound which so thrills the ear? Here is a suggested breakdown of the Auden line. Oh, what is that sound which so thrills the ear? The sequence begins with an offbeat. Offbeat is an unstressed syllable which is normally placed at the start or the end of a line of verse. Here the 3 metrical feet contain 3 beats apiece, and in a strong weak configuration which is known as a dactyl. That makes the line as a whole an example of dactylic trimeter. The line has dactyl pattern where in those 10 syllables, a stressed or accented syllable is followed by 2 unstressed or unaccented syllables. Likewise, same as the analysis of the previous lines but had different numbers of stressed syllables, here the line had 3 stressed syllables called trimeter, and therefore it's called dactylic trimeter. However, only at first the line used an unstressed syllable which is indicated by the offbeat, the rest is dactyl. Okay, now comes to a final issue that will wrap up this unit. While verse is obviously characterized by its use of meter, it does not follow that all meter is verse. And as a consequence, it is important not to lose sight of the fact that meter has an existence outside literature. We need therefore to treat this stylistic feature, as we do with many aspects of style, as a common resource that is shared across many types of textual practice. So for that reason, to give an instance, consider the following short example of non-literary discourse: an advertisement for a bathroom shower appliance. Never undress for anything less. The example above is a jingle or slogan that phonologically contour text designed by advertisers as an aid memoir. A simple text to be sure, but nonetheless makes use of an interesting metrical scheme. The following pattern of the above line is like this: never undress for anything less. Notice how the couplet employs an offbeat at the start of each second line. Line initial offbeats are commonly used to help generate so-called 4x4 sequences, and the example above does indeed contain 2 lines of 4 syllables each. The scheme is also organized into a chiasmus, which is an asymmetrical mirror image pattern where the strong to weak pulse, dum-d, is parallel by a weak to strong pulse, d-dum. Overall, this 4-syllable pattern resembles a Paeonic meter, which is a type of metrical pattern that invites a bridge style of delivery with a cantering or quick tempo of recitation. Okay, so that's all from me. Next will be explained by Clarissa and Alnilam, then followed by Vian. Okay, thank you.
Aston already explained a set of basic principles for the analysis of rhythm and meter in poetry. And now, me and Ochie will explain about interpreting patterns of sound. This unit will raise and explore some issues concerning the significance of patterns of sound for stylistic analysis. Specifically, this unit should encourage us to think about how we, as stylisticians, make connections between, on the one hand, the physical properties of the sounds represented within a text, and on the other, the non-linguistic phenomena situated outside a text to which these sounds relate. There are two subtopics. The first one is onomatopoeia, and the second one is the phonostatic fallacy. Onomatopoeia, a feature of sound patterning, which is often thought to form a bridge between style and content. Onomatopoeia is when a word describes a sound and actually mimics the sound of the object or action it refers to when it is spoken. Onomatopoeia appeals to the sense of hearing, and writers use it to bring a story or poem to life in the reader's head. We can think of onomatopoeia almost like a sound effect. When the word is said, the sound that it makes sounds like the thing it is talking about. These words can give a more detailed description of an item or a situation by actually allowing the listener to hear the sound of what is being talked about. Onomatopoeia can occur either in a lexical or a non-lexical form. Lexical onomatopoeia draws upon recognized words in the language system. For instance, words like thud, crack, slurp, or when we eat noodles, and buzz, whose pronunciation enacts symbolically their reverence outside language. By contrast, non-lexical onomatopoeia refers to clusters of sounds which echo the world in a more unmediated way, without the intercession of linguistic structure. For instance, the mimicking of the sound of a car revving up might involve a series of non-lexical approximations, such as vroom vroom, vroom vroom, and so on and so forth. I want to show you a short video which contains onomatopoeia examples, and actually the original duration of the video is about 3 minutes to 4 minutes, but I trimmed the video and speed up the video playback so that you guys don't get bored seeing it. Okay, happy watching.
Onomatopoeia is using words that imitate the sounds things make. We call them sound words. Zoom, 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 kaboom! To the onomatopoeia alphabet. Boo, 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 choo, choo! To the onomatopoeia alphabet. Say the letter, say its sound, then say a word that makes a sound. Move, move, move! Girls and boys, move, move, move! To the words that make noise. Onomatopoeia. A says ah, achoo, achoo. B says b, boing, boing. C says caw, caw. D says d, ding dong. E says ek, ek, ek. F says fizzle, fizzle. G says g, gobble, gobble. H says ho, ho, ho. Zoom, 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 kaboom. To the onomatopoeia alphabet. Boo, 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 choo, choo. To the onomatopoeia alphabet. I says it, itch, itch. J says j, jingle, jingle. K says kapow, kapow. L says lick, lick. M says munch, munch. N says nay, nay. O says nom, nom, nom. P says ping, ping. Zoom, 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 kaboom. To the onomatopoeia alphabet. Boo, 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 choo, choo. To the onomatopoeia alphabet. says quack, quack, quack. R says roof, roof. S says suey, suey. T says toot, toot. U says ugh. V says vroom, vroom. W says whoosh, whoosh. X says kasing, kasing. Y says yeah. Z says zap, zap. Zoom, zoom, zoom. Kaboom! To the automatopoeia alphabet.
I hope you guys enjoyed the video on the previous slide. And next, examples of onomatopoeia in poem. The first one is Pylons by Stephen Spanders, and the second one is The Windover by Gerard Manley Hopkins. Examples are good illustrations of poetic onomatopoeia at work. In the first poem, Pylons, Spender foregrounds a particular set of consonant sounds in order to embody the dryness, the very desiccated quality of the empty brook that his poetic line describes. While in the second poem by Hopkins, he represents a different kind of onomatopoeia built not through consonant harmony but by a kind of vowel disharmony. In addition, Poem 1 and Poem 2 both use sound symbolism to invite from the reader an effective response to a text. They can be said to express poetic phonesthesia. Okay, that's all from me. And now let's go to the next subtopic, the phonesthetic fallacy, which will be explained by Ochie. Thank you.
Next, the phonesthetic fallacy. There is simply no such thing as a dry consonant or a flying vowel. If such direct connection could be made, it would mean that every time we meet a consonant configuration, like the example at onomatopoeia's part, we will instantly think that every consonant is a dry or flying vowel. Second, there were actually more of the so-called dry k, t, f consonants than there were in the Spanish line. You can go back and count them by yourself. The point is, there is no such prose that is so dry. To make it more clear, the final sentence of the previous paragraph has exactly the same progression of vowels as the Hopkins line, such as so, were, my, fuse, mer, and hunch. Basically, the phonesthetic fallacy is trying to directly connect a particular feature of sound in a text with non-linguistic phenomena outside the text, and the sort of interpretative practice which does make such direct connections. In other words, the fallacy lies in the assumption that language functions unproblematically as a direct symbol of the real world. The phonesthetic fallacy, if not articulated in precisely the same terminology as here, is a serious issue for stylistic analysis. Ness said of it as something that teachers of language and literature have come to dread when dealing with the interpretation of phonetic features in literary texts. To avoid the interpretative pitfall that is the phonesthetic fallacy, we need to make the assumption that a particular piece of language is intended to be performed mimetically. Second, we should never lose sight of the text immediately surrounding the particular feature of style under consideration, the co-text in other words. In Hopkins' example, for instance, the salient items are preceded by a very different stylistic pattern, where coordination from the words beauty and velour and act suggests a perhaps more languid precursor to the constraining, brisker, and more strident delivery invited of the highlighted sequence. In Hopkins again, note how the disharmony at the phonetic level is underscored by the mixture of grammatical forms that carry these sounds, a mixture which comprises an uncoordinated sequence of nouns, verbs, and adverbs, and which is even fronted by a non-lexical expressive particle like "oh". There are also conventions for reading sound imagery, such that certain types of sounds are conventionally interpreted in certain ways. Moreover, onomatopoeia works on the reader's familiarity with the entity described, which means that we need to know that we are being told about, let's say, a dry brook or the flight path of a falcon before we can search out a correspondence in sound. Therefore, the last point, phonetic and semantic properties interact with one another in a way that mutually reinforces and intensifies both aspects of language. Thus, the known dry consonants in Spanish are conventionally understood as heightening the semantic quality of aridity. This explains why a word like waterless, which contains softer consonants, would not have had the same impact even though it is semantically compatible in the context. It will simply not heighten meaning in the way that the word parched does.
Okay, hello everyone, my name is Vian and I'm your last journey in this last slide. It is going to be very simple, but we'll discover such an important point for us in the journey of stylistic world. Okay, so in the last slide, as you can see, my topic discover about style in a single poem. So, what is the goal of style in a single poem? Well, you can see that on my slide presentation, but I will replay that to you. Style single poem is to help us to organize the exploration in a single text from multiple stylistic perspective. Yeah, to help us the exploration in the stylistic world with the various kind of perspective. And I will explain that to you in the next slide. Let's go. Okay, we're here in slide 2. Understand more stylistic with the example from the cover by Langley. Okay, you can see the picture on my slide presentation, but let's take a look in this slide. The poem by Langley. At a glance, we could interpret this poem like he telling us the way he describing his lover to the audience and seem fine in this perspective. But the main point is not only in one scenario. The style in a single poem discover a lot and more than that. So let's go into the next slide to discover more about this poem and what is going on. Let's go. Alright, we're here in slide 3. This section will help us to see multiple variations of interpretation through various questions. The question asks of a text cover a range of stylistic models, which include but are not restricted to the material on sound and rhythm which was developed along this trend. Alright, so in a simple way to help us understand those sentences is the question that related with the mechanical way, such as the grammar, tone, intonation, and so on. This mechanical question could help us to see a wider perspective along in the journey, like the title said, exploration. So let's go to see what is the questions about it. Okay, we're here in slide 4. And as you can see the questions on my slide presentation, and those are the questions that could help us to interpreting a many kind of curiosity in the matters to enrichen our knowledge in this section, the style in a single poem. And those are not only focusing on the philosophy meaning. Instead, those questions more relatable to open up more perspective through mechanical questions like I said before. Yep. Alright, we're here in slide 5, the last slide. In a summary, the way of interpretation could be wider and broader depends on the questions. Style in a single poem discover a lot of mechanical questions to understand a many POV from, and that is why that is called an exploration. And so that's it all, my friends. I hope you enjoy our presentation, and I hope you can get a point when we share this knowledge to enrich our perspective, and we'll be talking about this poem in stylistic world. We are from the group this week, Ochie, Aston, Vian, sending off. Goodbye and have a nice day, everyone. Bye bye.